Locked away in enormous, tightly guarded warehouses sit an estimated $5 billion worth of cars, the single largest collection in the world. And where else could it be but Brunei, a tiny kingdom on the northern coast of Borneo? The collection belongs to none other than the Sultan of Brunei. If you've been lurking around car forums, you've probably seen the infamous leak, over 1,300 photographs of his collection supposedly taken by an auction photographer back in 2001. Whether every detail of this leak is accurate or not is still being debated, but one thing is certain: this is the biggest private car collection on Earth with over 7,000 vehicles. To put that into perspective, if you lined all 7,000 cars bumper to bumper on the Le Mans circuit, they'd cover the legendary track twice over and then some. But here's the catch: most of these cars haven't even been driven. Many have been left sitting for decades in what are essentially giant greenhouses, baking under the brutal tropical sun. Paint faded, engines seized, tires flat. So what makes this collection so special? What separates it from the standard fleet of Brabus G-Wagons and Aventadors parked in front of some footballer or day trader's Dubai penthouse? Well, for starters, the Sultan's warehouses aren't just filled with typical hypercars. They contain dozens of one-offs, concept cars that were never meant to leave the drawing board, and prototypes built exclusively for him. At one point, manufacturers like Bentley even had entire divisions whose sole purpose was to engineer and hand-build whatever the Sultan asked for. In this video, we'll dive into the outrageous, borderline absurd world of the Sultan's collection, from priceless icons to forgotten oddballs, and uncover what makes it so fascinating, frustrating, and downright legendary. The Sultan of Brunei, whose full name I won't even attempt to pronounce, is the absolute monarch of a tiny oil-rich country in Southeast Asia. He's been on the throne since 1967, and thanks to Brunei's enormous oil and gas reserves, he and his family have amassed unimaginable wealth. But here's the twist: many of these cars we're looking at today don't even belong to the Sultan himself. A significant portion of this collection was actually purchased by his brother, Prince Jeffrey, and Jeffrey's eldest son. Together, they own around 3,500 cars. Just to put that in perspective, two of them hold the Guinness World Record for the largest Rolls-Royce collection on Earth, roughly 150 cars. Most of their buying spree took place between 1980s and the 1990s, when money was flowing and exotic cars were being ordered in bulk. Many may wonder, where in God's name do you even store all these cars in the first place? Well, we don't know the exact place, but it's speculated that they are stored in various warehouses across Brunei. The warehouses themselves are massive, with multiple floors, each dedicated to a specific company or sort of having a theme. For example, Porsche 959s get their own section. Unsurprisingly, Ferraris also get their own section, with multiple one-off prototypes, rare variants, and such. These warehouses are so protected, it's like they're part of the military. Barbed wire and security guards constantly keep outsiders out of reach. I wouldn't be surprised if he has an AC-130 on standby, ready to smite anybody within a 100-meter radius. So it's clear that he does care fondly of his massive collection, and that raises the question: why are these cars in such miserable condition? I'll get to that a bit later in the video, but firstly, let's just take a look at what this guy has been hoarding for years. Like I mentioned earlier, the real treasure of his collection isn't just in the one-offs, it's in the sheer scale of some of the rarest production cars ever made. And nothing proves that point better than his fleet of McLaren F1s. Now, most enthusiasts would die just to see one McLaren F1 in person. Jay Leno has one, Rowan Atkinson had one, and that's already legendary. The Sultan, he has 11. Yes, 11 of them. But it gets even crazier. Out of the 5 McLaren F1 LMs ever built to commemorate the McLaren's Le Mans victory, the Sultan owns 3 of them. For context, all 5 were originally painted in McLaren's iconic papaya orange, but the Sultan wasn't satisfied with that. He had his repainted in custom liveries that looked like these. And it doesn't stop there. He also owns a McLaren F1 Longtail, one of the most desirable and rarest iterations, finished in black. And the crown jewel? A rare, genuine McLaren F1 GTR that appears to be the actual Le Mans winning race car. To put that in perspective, just this McLaren collection alone is easily worth $250 million today, conservatively. And oh, if that wasn't enough flexing, he also owns the first ever production F1. Next up are his Bugattis. He owns 4 EB110 SS, which are decently rare cars, but the one I want to show is this one. It's definitely an acquired taste. Personally, I find it hideous and it reminds me of the Harlequin version of the VW Golf. Proof that money doesn't buy taste most of the time. The others are just normal EB110s though. Of his Porsches, this one definitely takes the cake. A road legal 962C built by Dower. It is essentially the street version of the legendary Le Mans winning endurance legend. It was built from 1993 to 1997 and only 13 were ever made. Dower used to race with Porsche back in the day and they used that experience to build these road cars. The car reportedly hit a top speed of 400 kilometers an hour, but since it wasn't done by complying with proper regulations, it isn't properly recognized. It very much could have been the fastest road car up until 2005. It's got even a better power to weight ratio than the F1 too. Something tells me this one is better left sitting in a garage than being wrapped around a pole. Now for the F40s and 959s. He has 7 standard F40s converted to right-hand drive with AC, power windows, radios, etc. By most credible sources, the Sultan had around 11 F40s. Mainly right-hand drive road cars that Pininfarina reworked to its taste, plus 2 F40 LMs, because apparently one race spec F40 just wasn't enough. There were just 19 F40 LMs ever made. As for the 959s, there isn't a proper source either, varying between 12 and 17 cars. Allegedly, it was imported to Brunei, bypassing the US import rule by labeling them as test vehicles. One source also states that there was a gold-plated one, but I haven't found anything. One of the most remarkable cars in the Sultan's collection is the BMW Nazca M12. Designed by Ital Design in the early 90s, it was meant as a futuristic spiritual successor to the BMW M1. The car looked like it drove straight out of a sci-fi movie, with a full carbon fiber body, dramatic gull-wing canopy, and a performance aimed at nearly 300 km an hour. Originally, the Nazca M12 was just a concept car, never intended to see the road. But the Sultan, being the Sultan, persuaded Ital Design to make him a fully functional version and the engine tuned by Alpina. To this day, photographs only confirm the existence of a black example in Brunei, though some sources claim a blue one may exist as well. Next up is an absurdly long list of Ferraris. This one is a real gem, the Ferrari Mythos. Built in 1989 by Pininfarina and based on the Ferrari Testarossa, it used the same 4.9-liter flat 12 engine but wrapped it in something far more futuristic. The body was made entirely of carbon fiber, giving it a sleeker drag coefficient, and it even featured active aerodynamics, a technology that was way ahead of its time. Only 3 were ever produced, and of course one sits in Brunei. But the Sultan didn't stop there. Another Testarossa-based creation was the Ferrari FX, also from the late 80s. This one's even crazier. It featured pioneering carbon fiber construction and one of the first paddle shift gearboxes ever put in a car, a 7-speed sequential transmission developed with Williams, the Formula 1 team. Only 7 to 9 were ever made, and the Sultan owns 6 of them. And then there's the Ferrari F90 Speciale. This car was so secret that even Ferrari didn't officially acknowledge it at the time. Commissioned by Sultan's brother Jeffrey, it was basically a phantom Ferrari. The world only discovered it in 2002 when a photograph surfaced, and Ferrari itself didn't confirm its existence until 2005. Just 6 were built, and today it's considered one of the rarest Ferraris ever made. It might look a bit goofy and very 80s, but the mystery makes it legendary. Moving on to Bentley. probably the car maker that the Sultan had the biggest impact on. In fact, some say that he practically kept Bentley alive in the 90s. The most famous example is the Bentley Dominator, the world's first Bentley SUV built decades before the Bentayga. Underneath, it was basically a Range Rover P38, but with Bentley styling and a price tag of $4 million each. He ordered 6 of them because why not? Then there's the Bentley Java, a 1994 concept car that never reached mass production, unless you lived in Brunei, of course. The Sultan had multiple versions made, coupes, convertibles, and even estates. The rear is very reminiscent of the Lexus GS430, intentional or not. The engines came from BMW, tuned by Cosworth. Think of it as Bentley experimenting with a smaller, sportier future, but only for one customer. Another curious one is the Bentley Monte Carlo, based on the Continental R. It looks like a cross between a vintage luxury coupe and a barge with swooping roofline and split bumpers. Not to everyone's taste, but it definitely stands out. And then there's my favorite, the Bentley Buccaneer. Only 6 were ever made, all for the Sultan of course. It had a turbocharged 6.8-liter V8 with design cues that actually foreshadowed the Bentley Continental GT that would arrive years later. These are just a handful of his Bentleys. There are more one-offs, but the video is already long as it is. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a part 2 covering more of these cars that aren't included in the leak. At one point, the Sultan was reportedly buying half of all the Bentleys produced. The brand even set up a dedicated division just to handle his commissions. Without him, some say Bentley might not have survived the 90s. Aston Martins were also some of his favorites. He had them make him the AM3 and the AM4, both based on the existing Aston Martin Vantage 600 chassis but with a completely bespoke body. The AM3 had a black strip running in between its headlights, sort of like the new Ferrari F80 or the 12 Cilindri. But overall, I think this one looks kinda droopy. The AM4 on the other hand looks stunning, with the front reminiscent of the DB5 or DB6 and futuristic looking rear light bar. Gotta say, he's my favorite Astons of the bunch. Oh, and he also has a Lagonda estate. Just wanted to point that out. Fantastic taste. Lastly, there are his Virages. At first glance, they don't seem too out of the ordinary compared to the other Aston Martins, except for one strange detail. They're listed as Superleggera models. Almost nothing is known about this trim. Even some journalists doubt it ever officially existed. It could simply be a typo, or if the sources are correct, there might be only 3 of them in the entire world. If you thought that's where his collection ends, you'd be very wrong. Here are some less rare but no less interesting cars of his that aren't really one-offs. A really underrated car here is the Chevy Catfish Camaro-based Callaway Supernatural Z8. If you didn't know who Callaway is, they're essentially the Brabus equivalent of GM. They're probably most well known for the Callaway Sledgehammer, a heavily modified C4 Corvette capable of 410 km an hour in 1988, a pretty fast car by all accounts even now. The Supernatural boasted increased power and a new front bumper that reduced drag. In total, 18 cars were built during its 3-year production run. Another less talked about car is the Yankel Tempest, a coach-built version of the C4 Corvette. Its body was completely hand-built in the UK. The designers took it apart to its bare chassis and redesigned nearly everything. The new body panels were fabricated out of fiberglass and Kevlar, and then experienced craftsmen fitted them onto the chassis by hand. Inside, the C4's dashboard, steering wheel and seats were retained, but nearly everything was upholstered in high-end materials, which varied according to every individual customer's choice. This one's my favorite, a heavily modified pickup based on the Fiat Cinquecento. The Sultan owns a one-off Fiat Cinquecento pickup AH, reimagined by Pininfarina as an open-air mini pickup, complete with a roll bar over the loading bed, half doors, or barely any, and AH lettering all over. Of course, the interior is no stranger to this treatment either, all finished in top-of-the-line materials. It has also been converted into a right-hand model. And if you thought the Sultan stopped at just one questionable golf cart, think again. Among the strangest toys is something called the hobby car B612. And yes, it's as bizarre as the name suggests. Imagine a 4-seater, open-top, mid-engined, amphibious vehicle. That's right, it can drive on land and cruise on water. Built in France, which already explains a lot, the B612 came with hydropneumatic suspension, twin hydrojets at the back for water propulsion, and even steered partly by a joystick mounted next to the gear shifter. Power came from a Peugeot-sourced 1.9-liter diesel engine, giving it a top speed of around 140 km an hour on land and about 11 km an hour in water. Only 52 to 65 units were ever made, so it's actually decently rare. But still, a mid-engined amphibious golf cart? I'm not entirely sure when I would want one, unless I'm the Sultan, of course. And for the final car, I've saved the strangest for last. You might be wondering, how could it possibly get weirder than an amphibious French golf cart? Well, how about a Batmobile? Okay, not the Batmobile, but a heavily modified Mercedes-Benz SL R230 transformed to look like one. This wasn't some tacky body kit job either. The entire body is made out of carbon fiber, sculpted into complex shapes that aren't exactly easy to pull off even now. Carbon fiber is infamously hard to mold into complex shapes, which is one of the reasons why we didn't really see cars, apart from the best of the best, being built from it. So the person who made this really isn't kidding around. The strangest part, no one really knows who actually made it. According to an old thread on Ferrari chat, it was supposedly built in the UK by an unknown individual, but there is no conclusive evidence. Like so many of the Sultan's cars, the details are fuzzy, half rumor, half legend. And maybe that's what makes this car so interesting. It's Brunei's very own Batmobile hidden away from the world. It's so interesting that we haven't known about this collection for around 20 years. One person gatekept these incredible pictures and somehow they only leaked around 6 months ago. The best part about the whole thing is we don't even know where the other cars are, how many remain now, how many have been sold off, or what conditions these cars are in right now. There are a multitude of reasons as to why the cars are maintained in this way. Firstly, just the sheer scale of this operation. It already takes considerable manpower and money to maintain just 100 of these cars, and to expect all of them to be in tip-top shape is totally unreasonable. You have greed and then you have the Sultan of Brunei. Plus, cars are meant to be driven. There's no way you'd be able to drive 7,000 different cars every day, all while managing an entire country. To make matters worse, Brunei is a tropical country. The sun's no joke there. Most of the pictures show the cars being stored in what is essentially a greenhouse, and you know what heat can do to expensive leather and other exotic materials. Lastly, in the 2000s, there was a significant financial turmoil for the leadership of the country. And as it turns out, if you spend a small country's GDP worth of money on supercars, there isn't much money left over to run a country. At the end of the day, the Sultan of Brunei's collection is less of a garage and more an alternate reality of automotive history itself. Some of these cars are priceless icons, others are bizarre one-offs that no one else on earth will ever own, and many of them are quietly rotting away in hidden warehouses under the sun. The most interesting part is that nobody knows what happened to these cars. Some say they might have been auctioned, some say they're still left rotting there. There might be more cars in there that haven't leaked yet, or he could have bought more cars, it's hard to say. It's both awe-inspiring and a little tragic, like a museum where the doors are locked forever. Whether you see it as a wasteful excess or the ultimate passion project, there is no denying that this is the world's most outrageous, fascinating car collection in the world. And maybe that's what makes it so legendary. Not just the cars themselves, but the mystery surrounding them.